Welcome to the FitBiz Accelerator, your ultimate guide to launching, growing, and scaling a thriving online fitness business. I'm your host, Tobias Young, and whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, this podcast is packed with actionable tips, real-world strategies, and the insights you need to crush your business goals and build the business of your dreams. Now that you're here, let's dive in. Welcome back to the FitBiz Accelerator Podcast, where we talk about what it really takes to launch, to grow, and to scale a successful fitness and coaching business. And today, I've got a great guest on the show, Kristin. And Kristin is a healthcare entrepreneur and the founder of Stat Wellness. It's a rapidly growing functional medicine and strength training practice. And she's actually scaled the company from a solo startup up to more than 60 employees across 7 locations, serving over 10,000 patients. And what I really like about Kristin's story is that she's not just building a business based on what's trendy this week. She's actually built something with real mission and real staying power. And she's passionate about blending that clinical excellence with more like innovative business strategy. And this is all while creating relationship-driven healthcare that actually helps people. So in today's episode, we're actually going to be talking about staying true to your mission and getting clear on who you are and what you offer, not trying to be everything to everybody, and then how to delegate and elevate your team as you grow. So Kristin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That was such an awesome introduction, and your energy, I'm feeling it. I'm ready for this discussion.
All right. And I'm excited to have you here too, Kristin. And you have such an interesting mix of healthcare, entrepreneurship, leadership, and then growth as well. And I think a lot of people listening, especially the fitness coaches and business owners, are going to get a ton out of your perspective. So to kick things off, give us a little bit of your background and the story behind Stat Wellness and how did this all begin?
So I always love to make a long story short, but I started my career as a personal trainer and I loved it. I loved encouraging my clients. I loved watching them get stronger. I loved watching them accomplish things they couldn't do. And my parents, they wanted me to get a college degree. So they kept encouraging me, get a college degree. And I'm really big into mentors in different phases of your life. And so one of my mentors at the time, she was like, you should do nursing. You really like healthcare and helping others. Why don't you just do nursing? You can always fall back on it. And I was like, well, that's awesome. Let's do it. So I decided to go nursing. And my first rotation was in a dialysis unit in the hospital. And the dialysis unit is where people's kidneys stop working. And so they have to go and get their blood filtered. And they're there for hours. And it was these bright fluorescent lights. It felt really dark. It felt very unhealthy, very discouraging environment. And I'm this personal trainer coming in, wanting to help people feel better. And I started realizing the further I got into my rotations, I feel so blessed to be in the United States because we have phenomenal sick care. When we need it, we've got great oncologists and cardiologists. But what I found is we are just that. We're really good at sick care. We're really reactive. We have really a lot of advancements in medicine, but when it comes to prevention, when it comes to looking at our health as one body, when it comes to really investing in our patients' lifestyle, we're lacking in the United States. So I went on to get my master's. I went on to get my doctorate. I went on to get training through the Institute of Functional Medicine, because even in the healthcare space, when I became a nurse practitioner, and I was working in primary care, I was like, well, this is my opportunity to talk about lifestyle. This is it. Now I can be this personal trainer talking to my patients about lifestyle. I had 10 minutes with each patient. And the way you're trained to operate as a nurse practitioner in our medical model is, what is the symptom? What's the diagnosis? And what's the treatment? So my brain kept going, okay, I've got 10 minutes to figure out what the symptom is, what the diagnosis is, and what the treatment is. And my mind kept saying, well, why? I'm a very curious person. So when I had a patient with their 3rd sinus infection, yes, I can send to ENT, but why? Why are we having 3 sinus infections this year? Why are you bloated all the time? And so that was kind of what led me down the functional medicine direction. And then even in the functional medicine space, I realized, yes, I had an hour with patients, but then I wouldn't see them for 4 months. And so that is what kind of evolved into the Stat Wellness model, where it was like, I want to see you coming in here and working out. I want you to meet with health coaches and dietitians. I want to know that you have a community, you have accountability, and I want to help you understand how your body works, both physically and internally. And that's what led to Stat Wellness.
Ooh, that is awesome, right? I love that. And I always love hearing how businesses actually start, because most of the time it's not some polished, perfect master plan. It's usually more like, hey, I have a vision. Let's try this. Okay, that worked. Now everything's on fire, but in a growth kind of way. So let's go there for a minute. Okay. When you first started, what was the original vision for Stat Wellness? And then how much has that vision actually stayed through the same versus evolving over?
Well, it's funny because I don't really talk about the 2014 Stat Wellness, because Stat Wellness really launched in 2019 with our first concept that we know today. But really, Stat Wellness started in 2014, and my dad still wears his dry fit shirt that I created my logo on, like Fiverr, one of those just quick pay $30, get a logo. So that was the 2014 Stat, and we just did boot camps in high schools. And I remember I had an employee that I was giving her 1099 forms at the end of the year, and I was like, wow, I paid this person $13,000. And we were doing boot camps in high schools. And that's where it actually started not with the model it was today. It started with just creating a space for people to move together. Nice. And as I was in healthcare and in medicine, it kind of evolved into the 2019 model, which is where we opened in Atlanta. And I would say at that point, our model was pretty similar to what it is now. There's several like micro things that changed, like the way we do our group fitness classes tweaked since 2019. Our memberships have tweaked since 2019. But the foundation has actually stayed really similar. And I think this is a good thing for us to talk about on this episode is I felt so pulled at different points to kind of do everything under these four walls. And I realized, a lot of times I was very thankful. I had to sit with it and sleep on it. But no, like as much as I believe in it, I'm going to refer to you and I want you to grow as your practice. Like we can't be everything for everyone. So we can kind of talk about some of those decisions. But I think the biggest thing in 2019 when I opened my first location, I did not have the vision that we would be kind of this nationwide practice that we're becoming. And that is what's been really exciting. It's like I just try to stay true in who we are, what we're doing, my passion, my mission, build a team of amazing people. And then the growth just happens. So I think that's what was the most surprising in 2019 is concept was similar, foundations were similar, always micro tweaking. But now we have a solid business model, and who knew what we were going to accomplish back in 2019?
Yeah. And one thing that you mentioned that I think is huge is staying true to your mission and your vision also, despite all the trends and all the fads that we were kind of talking about earlier. And that is such an important conversation right now because there's always some new shiny object out there. One week, everybody wants to do this. And, the next week, everybody's trying to pivot to that over there. And if you're not careful, you can start drifting away from everything that made your business special in the first place. So let's talk about that. How have you stayed grounded in your mission while still growing and adapting as a business?
Mm-hmm. So I think that's such a great question. Number one, I think a lot of the people I've consulted with in business, when they've kind of pulled to that next shiny object, is normally a dollar amount tied to it. It's normally like, oh, I could make more money as a business owner if I do this, or I could make more money. I would say true to who is your avatar, who is your ideal person, and what does that person need? Because your patient, your client, they're going to feel when you're trying to grasp at straws to make ends meet, and that they're going to leave, right? So I think number one is like, don't make business decisions just based on the dollar amount, because a lot of the jumping on trends is because it's going to generate revenue, or they think it's going to generate revenue. So number one, don't make business decisions solely based on money when it comes to people's health. I think that my husband and I talk all the time. We have never run our business based on a P&L, and people think that's crazy when I say that out loud. And I'm like, but it's not a P&L that's going to change people's health, right? It's the experience. It's how they walk in the door. It's how they're treated. It's how they're cared for. It's how they feel when they leave. So if you are in a healthcare service-based industry and you're solely running a business based on a P&L, I would number one, evaluate that. Or number two, don't get into the fear-based leadership where you need to do something that is not in line with your purpose because of the dollar amount. I think that's really important. And then also at the beginning, it's writing out for me. It was really clear of like, okay, let's write down a 1 or 2 sentence, what I want every person that walks in the door to feel and experience. Like, what is truly our mission? And then I thought about like, okay, 3 buckets in that. How are we going to deliver that mission? So then when people come to me with ideas, and we're constantly evolving and we're constantly changing because that's what businesses do, but I still go back to that mission, and I still go back to these 3 buckets. Are we offering education with this? Like, is this going to be, okay, you want to bring in a new series. You want to do some basic lifts, or you want to help people with kettlebells. Okay, that falls into the education bucket. We're helping people understand how their body works, building foundations. But I would put some infrastructure in place that helps you with decision-making so that you don't have to always think about, like, is this in line with our mission? Is it not? The clearer you are in your framework, the easier it is to say yes or no. For me, some really tactical things that have come up that I'd love to do that are very in line with our mission and our 3 buckets is mental health, right? Like we know mental health is such an issue in the United States. It's a very underserved population. And I love the idea of medicine, movement, and mental health, right? The 3 M's. But when you think about the practicality of it, it's like, okay, now I'm trying to run a therapy practice, a gym, and a medical practice under one roof, right? I'm not a mental health expert. How am I going to get the therapist to address all of our patients' needs, right? So, I love the idea. It offers, a redefined version of healthcare, but it's complicating our model, and it's then distracting from our medicine and movement services.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And was there ever a season where you felt pressure to chase trends, offer more, or even go outside your lane just because the market was kind of pulling that way? And if so, how did you navigate that without watering down what made your brand strong in the first place?
Gosh, I feel like we're in this right now. So the wellness industry, like number one, I almost want to remove wellness from our name. And that makes me really sad. But the wellness industry has become $1 trillion industry that is all about the new injections or peptides or things like that we can do. Like they're not addressing the person as a whole. So I think I'm in a state right now where it's a good time to ask me this question, because I do think there's value in peptides. And I'm very excited about some of the advancements in the science that's coming in that space. But I think this is where, for us as a practice, I see this, okay, the amount of money you can make on peptides. I don't want to use names, but there are some really big practices out there where I know where they source their peptides. They get these peptides for $50, and then they charge their clients $1,200 a month.
That's crazy.
To me, I look at this and I'm like, this is unethical. This is an unethical business model. But I also believe in peptides. And so I've had these conversations with some of these companies, and they're for research use only. They're not for human use. And I go back to our medical license. And, if you choose to use these and you know the quality of them, but as a medical practice, I go back to, okay, I need to use things that have been researched for human use, that are third-party tested, that are high quality. Like, yes, I could get these peptides for $50, and yes, I could charge margins and be below the $1,200. But is that in line with who we are as a business? And so we do utilize peptides, but we get them only from sterile compounding pharmacies. We keep margins very low, and we build out protocols that are very safe and effective. And so I think in the wellness industry, there is so much noise, and there's so many things we can jump on. But I remind my team, I remind me that some of these things we start to implement in once there's enough research, that's the cherry on top. Let's go back to what our foundations are. And so I think about health trends kind of going like this, up and down, up and down. And the Stout Wellness model is staying true through all of it and kind of dabbling in a little bit of it when there's enough research, when there's enough science, enough evidence, and quality is there. But we are really a lifestyle-based medicine practice. Muscle is always going to be important. Energy is always going to be important. How we eat is always going to be important. And so I always remind myself, our foundations, and I've built this into a pyramid that I call the Stout Wellness Treatment Guide. The foundations are always going to be those lifestyle things.
Yeah.
That's always there.
Yeah.
But I think it's a hard time right now because there is so much noise and so many shiny objects. I feel like more so I've been in the wellness industry for a very long time, since 2005. And I feel like this season is where there's the most informed consumers I've ever seen. They're the most educated with AI. There's so many new things out there. There's so many biohacking tools you can use. There's so much noise. It is crazy. Yeah. And there's some that's very valid, right? But we're not going to jump on all of it, and we're going to stay true to our foundations.
Yeah. And I think that's such a powerful lesson, because a lot of fitness entrepreneurs, especially, they think growth has to mean adding more and more and more. So more services and more random stuff, and, more peptides and more this, and, more confusion sometimes. And sometimes growth actually comes from getting just more clear and more focused and more disciplined. So how do you actually think about staying in your lane for a business owner and then owning your niche? And then what advice would you give to a fitness business owner who keeps trying to do everything for everyone?
Well, decision fatigue is a really big thing. So I always have talked about, you really should be able to say what you do in a 30-second elevator pitch, right? If you can't kind of consolidate what you do into a 30-second elevator pitch, you might want to clean up your messaging and really bring in some clear, concise definition to what you do. And this is hard with us being a one-stop wellness shop. but we've been able to identify it as one sentence. We're a functional medicine-led approach to modern healthcare. Like, this is the way healthcare should be done. So I'd get really clear on your message. That's really helpful. And then for us, adding more services diluted some of our other services. So what I mean by that is we have physical therapy. We're going to always be a physical therapy movement kind of run practice. So as much as I love chiropractors, as much as I love acupuncturists, I'm going to always refer out to those specialists when needed and elevate them. And we're going to stick with physical therapy, because if my functional medicine providers are trying to refer and they have a chiropractor, a physical therapist, and an acupuncturist, you get into decision fatigue and you lack that clarity on how we're going to help you rehab, heal, get stronger, and recover internally between our four walls. So I'd get, exactly as you said, get really clear on your message. Make sure that you can say what you do in a 30-second kind of pitch, elevator pitch. So anybody you run into at the grocery store, you can explain to them what you do, right? And I would also, after you've been doing it for a little bit, we always go back and look at word on the street. What are people coming in to see us for? And then tighten up that, because that's what the market is demanding. That's where they're coming in for it. So let's say, for example, you're a personal trainer and you're really well known for helping people deadlift and squat heavier than they ever have before. Your messaging should lead into that on like, let's get you to be able to PR. Let's get you stronger than you've ever been. Maybe you're not going to talk about balance and Pilates if you're strength training with your clients and that's your stitch and everybody's coming into you and you hear them over and over and over again. I want to build muscle. How do I get stronger? I want to be able to lift my body weight, right? Lean into that on your messaging versus trying to just talk about movement as a whole.
Yeah. And I think that leads perfectly into the next piece, which is being really clear on who you are and then what you offer. And that kind of ties into it, because I think one of the biggest reasons that businesses struggle is not because they aren't talented, but because they're muddy with their marketing, their messaging, and people don't understand really what they do, who it's for, and why it matters. So for you, how important has clarity been in actually building the trust and building your momentum?
So for us, one of the things, and I know this is a little bit off of branding, but I think important, one of the biggest values that we've heard from our business since we've started is that we're really transparent with our pricing on our website. So I know maybe not everybody's able to do that, but I have found the transparent message and the transparent pricing, once that person initiates an email, a phone call, a text, a lot of time they've already looked at our website, they're already clear on what we do, and they understand the investment. So if you are listening and you're able to have a really transparent pricing model on your website, I know a lot of entrepreneurs I've talked with, they feel like nervous to share their pricing, that people are either not going to reach out or a competitor is going to take their pricing or whatever it is, but they already know what the investment is when they reach out and they're already interested and bought in. So I would say in the messaging for us, and part of our experience since we've opened in 2019, is a clear message and a clear service menu with pricing and transparency. That has really helped us get good leads that end up booking, and that you don't have to over the phone have your person tell them how much a new patient visit is.
Yeah, it's kind of like pre-qualification all built in there. And then let's talk about growth too, because going from a solo startup to over 60 employees in 7 locations, that's no small thing, right? That's growth. It's not like I made a Canva graphic and now I'm a CEO type growth. That's actual infrastructure. That's leadership that you need to install. There's systems, decision-making. So what do you think were some of the biggest shifts that you had to make personally in order to scale the business like?
So there's a few. I like to think about this as a child. You've got infancy, you've got toddler, you've got childhood, and you've got adolescence, and then the adult, the consulting, right? And just so you know where we are, I always joke we're in the adolescence. We're in we've got some acne. We've got a lot of things we're figuring out as we scale into new markets and new states. But I was also in infancy. So if any of your listeners are in infancy and they're like physically tired, right? They're drained. They're, their own practitioner, their own trainer, their own coach. They don't have a whole team. Infancy is hard. You're building the foundation. You're hustling. You're working hard. You're physically exhausted. What I will tell you in infancy that's interesting is though you maintain a lot of control, which you don't realize until you get out how nice that is. Yeah. When you show up, you show up. When you hear the message, you're giving the message, right? There's a lot of things in infancy that are beautiful, but infancy should really be about building a foundation. And one of the things I did is just write down everything I'm thinking and doing. Just start writing it down as we're scaling. Toddler was a really interesting phase. That was kind of where I described we opened our 2nd location in the same city. And that was kind of my wobbling of okay, I can't be in both of these locations physically. So so now we get to test some of the infrastructure we put in place in infancy. And, you have to have trust in the people. So we were kind of like wobbling between these two locations. We're like trying to figure out what's working, what's not working. We're building an infrastructure to scale. Childhood was fun. We were kind of plug and chug. Like that's when we opened our third in Peachtree City. Everything was like right around where we needed it to be. We could drive to each location. I had control over the team. I could hop on the phone with them. Childhood was great. There was really not a lot of issues in childhood. Once you start getting into more of what I describe as our adolescence, this is where I really talk about we moved from a startup to a corporation. And what has been the most game-changing in this phase? So infancy, early years, it's the infrastructure, it's the writing down what you're doing, it's the building the foundations, it's the staying clear on your message, everything we're talking about. Know your purpose, know your KPIs. I should have mentioned that before.
Yep.
What are your key performance metrics? Like, what does success look like? Know that early on and measure it. Keep track of it. So then fast forward into adolescence in 2024. So we opened in 2019. It took me 5 years to really learn how important it was to elevate and delegate. So 5 years into the business, that's really where we started to move to, okay, I have to build a leadership team and I need to train, instill, and invest in people that are going to be better than me. I need to get really amazing people working together, get them in their lane, trust them. So sometimes when the team comes to me with ideas, I'm like, well, what do you think? What have you figured out has worked? What are the KPIs you're measuring? What does success look like to you in your role with your team? And empowering them to make those decisions and understanding we might fall, right? Like somebody might make a decision that would have been different than what I made, but that's okay because we're falling forward, right? We're going to learn from it. We're going to get back up and we're going to keep going. And so it took me until 2024 was my year of elevating and delegating. And then 2025 was my year of really building infrastructure that created corporate success. And so some of the basic things we did in that year was we created what's called Rewind to Innovate. And our team, the feedback has been awesome on this. They get together with their specialists. So we've got the health coaches that get together, the dietitians that get together, our functional medicine providers that get together, our operational team that gets together. But they use this as a time to follow a framework. And Rewind is like, let's look at what we've been doing the last quarter. What's been going well? What's not been going well? What are some of our parking lot items that we need to bring up in a corporate-wide Zoom? And then they kind of end the meeting with Innovate. So Rewind to Innovate. What can we do in our role to bring innovation or bring efficiency? And then we do a corporate-wide Zoom where we get to see everybody's face together. When you have 7 locations in all different states, you don't get to all get together very often. And so we hop on there and we get each lead to represent their team and department and hear what's going on. What are the wins, the opportunities? Where are we going to innovate and bring kind of some new efficiencies into their role? So I'd say, at the beginning it's you, and then you start to scale with employees. You've got to learn how to elevate and delegate. You've got to learn to build company infrastructure. All the entrepreneurs I've met with, everybody says they want better communication in their organization, like over and over again. And I find people like to communicate in different ways. So we've learned to address all of them. We're going to do corporate Zooms. You're going to hear it from me. You've got email, you've got leaders, you've got management, you've got text, you've got all of these different forms of communication, because a well-communicated team, rowing in the right direction and in the same direction is what scales you.
Yeah. And that's so paramount. I can't say that enough, especially like the biggest bottleneck that actually held me back in the past was like me just wanting to do everything. And then when I finally started saying, you know what, I got to start to outsource this stuff. And then that's where you make mistakes in your hiring process. You hire people that aren't the great fit, and then you learn from it. And then you hire people that are freaking better at it than you, and they're doing certain things, and it helps elevate. But what were some of the biggest mistakes or some of the growing pains that actually came with scaling? Because from the outside, growth looks exciting, but behind the scenes, it usually comes with a lot of messy lessons. So what about you?
Man, so many. So I think this quote, probably a lot of people have heard, but be slow to hire and quick to fire. I think, we're a company that really cares about every single employee. And so we've let some maybe not as good employees stay longer than we should have. And that is a really good lesson to learn as a founder, as a CEO. I have really good intuition on if a person's the right fit or not pretty early on. And when you don't make those decisions, you kind of create a culture of complacency, and you create a culture that, one person can bring the whole team down. So be slow to hire, be quick to fire. I think that's a really big lesson learned. Another lesson learned is I've really learned over the years of doing this how uniquely different each person is and what they need. And so we implemented a personality test. And this has been really helpful. We do the Enneagram on all of our employees. And the reason I chose the Enneagram, if you're not familiar with it, is there's 9 personalities. We have all 9 in us. It doesn't put you in a box, so nobody can be upset that I'm labeling them as just a D on the disc and there's nothing else. Like we have all 9 in us. But it's actually been really helpful to understand the unique needs on a team and the unique dynamic. So like our peacemakers, I've learned a lot about how peacemakers approach their job. And the loyalists, I know what a loyalist looks like. The enthusiasts like me, I know our pitfalls. And so implementing that has been really helpful. Even in the hiring process, when we know their Enneagram and we know the role we're hiring, we can explain things that you're going to do really well in this job based on personality and things that are going to be tougher. Overarching, of course, is not perfect, but I can let someone know, hey, you're coming in as a perfectionist. You're going to be moving at a really quick speed. It's going to be very hard for you to be a perfectionist in this role.
Yeah.
So I would say the hiring piece, I've learned a lot. The other lesson learned, our biggest lesson learned financially was with our Nashville location. So our Nashville location is our biggest location. And it's interesting because one of our core values is ego is the enemy. And I'm like, when I had this decision to do this as a business owner, I think there was a bit of like, I don't want to say it's ego or just like level of confidence I shouldn't have had. So we have these locations. We had 4 in the Atlanta area that are thriving. Like we'd open a location and people just came in, right? We had brand awareness. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, well, we're going to go to Nashville and we're going to get the biggest, most beautiful building. And we're going to have like a line waiting outside of our doors. Like this is how I pictured this in my head. I don't know why. I pictured so much success in this Nashville location. And it was really interesting going into a new market where people didn't know who we were. It was crickets. And I was like, turns out you need to have like a pre-launch marketing strategy. Turns out you need to be like really scrappy, like I was with our Atlanta location when we first opened. I don't need to hire 2 people for each position, right? So my lesson learned was really like, stay scrappy. When you are scaling and you are a founder-run company, always, always stay scrappy. Assume the people are not going to flood in the doors. Stay scrappy, know where your money's going. You can always hire more when demand is there. That was like a really big lesson learned for me. And so Charlotte's our newest, largest location. We are keeping a big, beautiful vibe, but we have made a lot of kind of different decisions. We have much better lease terms we negotiated on. We hired a much more scrappy team. We're really excited to take our lessons learned with Nashville and apply them to Charlotte and see what happens. But I would say my advice is, make sure to build the foundations, focus on the client, focus on what your mission is. Really establish that before you start to make decisions based on a P&L statement, because your client is going to feel it if you're doing what's best from a financial perspective only. So build the foundations, be clear, be in the weeds, write everything down, get a lot of clarity. And then as soon as you are able to, and you're able to hire people that are going to be better than you in that role and elevate and delegate and trust and fall forward, be okay with failing. It's not the end of the world, right? You're going to get back up and you're going to keep going.
Yeah, that's pure gold right there. And also, Kristin, when it comes to building high performing teams, what are some of the non-negotiables for you? So what do you look for in people? What creates a strong culture? And then ultimately, what helps a team actually perform at a high level instead of just like staying busy?
So a few things I think there. Number one, we're really clear on our core values for our internal team. And I feel like it's taken us a while to know what those are. But when we clearly identified those and when we were able to interview and say, hey, this word, relentless customer service, is one of our core values. It's not sexy, right? Relentless customer service is hard. It's a grind. It's about what the person that walks in the door. So I think getting clarity on your organizational's core values and being able to share those during the interview process. And then we get our team to tell us an example of how they've demonstrated that. Or like, what does this look like? Or how does this word make you feel? The other thing from a leadership, I know this is kind of off from just like our general team, but one of my questions I've asked people, and I know this is weird, but if you were given a blank piece of paper, what do you do with it? And I've learned as a startup mentality and a founder run company. So I've understood throughout, and I've never been just a hired CEO, but I understand from a lot of my friends that are entrepreneurs, worked in different organizations, a founder run company and a hired CEO run company is 2 different beasts. So a founder-run company, urgency, creativity, we're really actually not micromanagers typically. We're so busy and we're so in the weeds still, even though we try to remove ourselves from it. And so I've learned when I interview leaders and I give them a blank piece of paper, and how does that make you feel? The people that kind of light up and they're like, ooh, I'm going to just like start brain dumping. I'm just going to pour all my thoughts on that paper and I'm going to start mapping things out. The people that get excited about the opportunity of a blank piece of paper thrive in our company.
That's good.
So gotten really clear on interview questions, on our core values. I've made our core values honest. I have not created like fluffy core values, like ego is the enemy. You know, you come in, if you're a doctor and you come in, or you're a nurse, or you're a nurse practitioner, or you're a personal trainer or a physical therapist, ego is the enemy. Once you start to get employed at Stout Wellness, on the organizational chart, you might be at different levels. We're not at different levels. We're people, right? We're people doing good work together. And I've gotten clear on that. So if somebody comes in and they, you know, have an ego, you feel it, right? Yeah. So I think getting clear on your core values is so important. Learning what interview questions for each position have been successful and keeping a log of those. Okay, this hire was amazing and this is why. Keep a log. Remember that as you scale. I think that's really important. And then I think it really, for me, I've recognized, and I know this won't probably be able to happen as we continue to scale, but our team, they like to hear from me. And I've realized like hearing our mission, our vision, our core values directly from the founder has been more valuable than I'd like to acknowledge. And so what we're doing with that is we're creating videos. We're creating videos of me talking about our company culture, who we are, getting people excited so that they hear it directly from me versus like a game of telephone. So I think that's also really helpful is if you're a founder-run company, which a lot of your podcast listeners, like they have their own business, right? You're always going to be the face of your business. And there's been a big movement where people want to put their money into a company where they trust the founder. And so don't be afraid to put your face out there, share your mission, share your vision, your clarity, your core values, who you are as a person. I think the last statistic I read is 86% of people put money into something that they trust. Trustworthiness is huge.
Yeah, I love that. Great feedback right there, you guys. So if you're listening to this, man, make sure you like and subscribe because there's going to be more gems coming your way. Those are some serious gems. And you also said that you love entrepreneurs and helping people be in their best, both in business and personally. And I love that because the truth is, building a business is going to expose everything. It's going to expose your habits, your blind spots, your mindset, your patience, your ability to lead under pressure. And sometimes entrepreneurship feels like personal development with invoices. And so how has building this company actually shaped you as a person?
Gosh, so many ways. And I even think about the leader I was back in 2019 to the leader I am now. You actually your threshold widens the longer you do it. And I think part of it is survival. It's survival in my own mental capacity. So what I mean by that is like certain little decisions in 2019, wanted to be involved in those like tiny decisions. If I wasn't attached on an email that I thought I should be aware of, I'd be like, hey, like I didn't know X, Y, and Z happened. Now, fast forward to 2026, Kristin, please leave me off emails. Right? Like I don't need to know everything going on in the organization anymore. I put you in the position so that you know what's happening on the team below you. So I have changed so much in the trust and the letting go. I've also changed so much in the being okay with things not being done exactly how I want them done. We can't scale with one person. And I know people have heard this message, but like actually applying it is challenging. But for us being a brick and mortar, it was pretty easy because once you're not physically in the space, there's a level of trust that has to happen. So I think our business model, it's not virtual. It's brick and mortars. I can only be in one place at one time. I was kind of forced to learn that lesson really quickly. But I'd say the other lesson, and I know this is kind of going back to my background in functional medicine, there's a couple things that I talk about a lot is I never, ever will allow my external environment to impact my internal balance. And so on paper, my life looks very unbalanced, right? I work a lot. I have 3 kids under 5 years old. I have a husband, I have family that lives in town. I work on the weekends. I work at night when the kids go to bed. It does not look balanced. And I recognize that. But my internal balance, I am living out my purpose, my mission. I am fulfilled. I am happy. I'm waking up with energy. I've got checklists that I do to evaluate, okay, am I thriving or am I surviving? Am I sleeping? Am I energized? Do I have a short fuse? Am I losing patience? I have these checklists that I use. I have objective data. How's my HRV, my sleep quality? And what I have learned is in 2019, I thought working out, and I know this is not my ideal, but I thought working out was an hour. Like I needed to work out for an hour, 6 days a week. And if I didn't have an hour to work out, I'd just not work out and I'd be disappointed. Right. And I started to realize in different seasons of life, things look different. Success looks different. So I started to, in each season of life, each phase, whether it was a newborn baby, whether it was a new business location, whether it was whatever it was, what does optimal look like in this season? And I'm going to write this out the same way I would for my patients of my hydration goals, my nutrition goals, my sleep goals, my movement goals. And there has been a large season, about 3 years, where my movement has been 12 minutes of relatively hard exercise a day, 12 minutes. And I look back in 2019, 12 minutes, I would have been like, never, nothing good's going to happen out 12 minutes. I need an hour, right? I'm marathon running, I'm lifting heavy. But I've realized in 12 minutes a day, I've been able to stay doing pull-ups. I've been able to squat my body weight. I've been able to maintain my muscle mass using body composition scans. So, is it a time where I'm thriving and I'm getting stronger? No, but I'm maintaining. Yeah. And in this season of life, maintenance is where I am with my movement goals. So I say all of this because my perspective has changed on what success looks like. And I'm constantly evaluating, but I will share this with any entrepreneur. If you are living out of alignment, if you are not doing something that brings you happiness and fulfillment, you're not going to be as successful. You're going to get burned out. You're going to get exhausted. So make sure you're keeping your internal balance in check, no matter what's happening external. 2 of my favorite quotes that I always say is let the fires burn. Since opening doors in 2019, I've never lost sleep over the business ever. And people are like, how? With all of the pandemic, the closures, economic declines, the staffing issues, I have never lost sleep. The business is not going to throw off my internal balance. Let the fires burn. I will address them and I'm here for them, but I'm not going to think about them as I'm going to bed, right? Yeah. So I love the quote, let the fires burn. And my second favorite quote is that I'm really good at finding peace in the chaos. So there will be chaos all around me, my phone blowing up, fires going on, and I'm over here and I just find peace in the chaos. And it's my survival technique, and it's allowed me to handle the demands of work. It's hard. Scaling a business is hard, but follow your mission, your purpose, be living in alignment, and make sure you're doing what you need to keep yourself internally balanced. The health of a founder-run business is only as healthy as the founder.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And even thinking about kind of like that bend but don't break attitude, where things are going to go off in a different direction. Things are not going to be exactly how you plan, but just let it bend and then bring it back in and do the things to make it continue to go forward. You're going to fall down, but fall forward as you're doing it. Some great takeaways. And this has been such a great conversation. And I think the big thread here is that real growth doesn't come from trying to be everything. It comes from clarity. It comes from leadership. It comes from staying true to your mission. And it comes from building a team and a business that can actually support the vision. And Kristin, before we actually jump into what's called rapid fire, where can people learn more about you and Stat Wellness?
Thank you for asking. So our website is statwellness.com. It's STAT wellness.com. And it stands for Strength to Achieve Total Wellness, if nobody knows that. We're also at Stat Wellness on Instagram. And then my personal page is KristinOja.com. And I'm at Kristin Oja DMP on Instagram. I'm trying to get more involved in LinkedIn. So follow me there, Kristin Oja. But statwellness.com and at Stat Wellness on Instagram is where we're the most present.
Perfect. All right. Let's have a little bit of fun here. Okay, I'm going to throw a few quick questions your way, and you can answer with just the first thing that comes to mind, just super fast answers. Are you ready?
Ready.
Morning person or night owl?
Oh, morning person.
One business lesson that you wish you learned earlier?
Hire faster, and elevate and delegate.
One trait that every great entrepreneur needs?
Purpose.
What's harder, starting the business or scaling the business?
Scaling.
One thing that people get wrong about leadership?
It's not glamorous. So can I add a caveat? I know I'm not supposed to.
Sure.
Rapid fire. I think successful businesses almost flip the organizational chart. I think as a leader, your goal is to empower and elevate those around you. So I have a very service-based leadership mentality. And so I think that sets your team up for success versus dictatorship. So it's not glamorous. Like I like to think of me as actually on the bottom of the totem pole, and I'm here to help serve those in my company.
Yeah, I love that. And what is a book that has impacted you the most?
How to Win Friends and Influence People. An oldie but a goodie. I love that book.
Is that Dale Carnegie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's a habit that helps you stay sharp personally and then also professionally too?
This is going to be so silly. I cannot function without my electrolytes. Hydration and electrolytes is 60% of fatigue in the United States is dehydration. And I absolutely think better. I feel better. I have better energy when I'm well hydrated. So I never skip on my water no matter what.
Me too. I drink too much. I'm peeing like every hour. Strength training or functional medicine? Which one do people underestimate?
Strength training. Muscle is your greatest asset as you age. Muscle is your metabolic bank. It's your longevity tool. Muscle, muscle, muscle all day.
What's one thing you're really excited about right now besides being on this podcast?
We have our first headquarters.
Whoa! Scheiße.
This is like mind-blowing brain emoji type stuff that we are opening a location that's non-revenue generating to collaborate, to brainstorm, and to create a culture around scalability. And I just can't wait. I hope we stay in touch and I can show you these pictures because we're putting abstract art up. We're putting girls smacking bubblegum. We're putting mouse on the wall that says everything is figure-outable.
Wow.
It's going to be fun and a vibe. But I'm so excited for it.
Show me pictures when you get it, okay?
Yeah.
And then finally, if you could give entrepreneurs one final piece of advice in one sentence, what would it be?
Set one goal a day. Set one goal a day. Don't try to accomplish everything.
Right. And then Kristin, obviously, this has been awesome. Thank you again for coming in on the show and sharing your journey, your insights, and your perspective. And for everyone listening, I hope this episode reminded you that you do not need to do every single thing and chase every single trend and copy everyone else or build a business that looks good only on the surface. Like, get clear on who you are. Get clear on what you do best. Get clear around your mission and grow with more intention. And thanks for tuning in to the FitBiz Accelerator Podcast. If you got value from this episode, be sure to tag it, share it, send it to another entrepreneur, another coach, another business owner who needs to hear it too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the FitBiz Accelerator. If you found value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a tip or strategy to grow your online fitness business. And if you're ready to fast track your success, don't forget to check out tntfitprocoaching.com. Until next time, stay consistent, stay focused, and keep crushing it.